And just as we mentioned earlier, the U.S. stock futures fall into a muted open, keeping the Dow Industrials on course to hold around the 23,000 a day after briefly trading above that big round number for the first time. What are the main benchmarks doing now? We see the Dow Jones Industrial Average gaining 0.2% to 22,014, while the S&P 500 futures added 0.13% to 2,560. The Nasdaq 100 futures inched higher to 6,129. Meanwhile, stocks in Asia closed narrowly mixed on Wednesday as investors in the region look to China's Party Congress for signs on future policy direction in the world's second-largest economy. The benchmark Nikkei 225 index closed higher for a 12th straight session after tacking on 0.13% to finish the session at 21,363.05. Across the Korean strait, the Kospi reversed early gains and slid to 0.06%, closing at 2,482.91, as gains made by automakers were offset by falls in blue-chip tech names. Down under, the S&P ASX 200 edged up 0.02%, ending at 5,890.5, with the utilities sub-index leading gains and rising 1.21%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was off 0.04%. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite advanced 0.28%, closing at 3,381.36, and the Shenzhen Composite lost 0.39%, ending at 2,000.1. Away from the markets now, South Africa's headline consumer inflation increased to 5.1% year-on-year in September from 4.8% in August. Data from Statistics South Africa shows inflation increased to 0.5% in September from 0.1% in August on a month-on-month basis. Core inflation, which excludes the prices of food, non-alcoholic beverages, petrol and energy, was unchanged at 4.6% year-on-year in September, while on a month-on-month basis, inflation rose to 0.4% from 0.1% previously. In the meantime, the South African cabinet reshuffle has taken its toll on the country's markets as the government's weekly bond auction failed to attract strong demand on Tuesday. The rand also extended losses against the dollar after President Jacob Zuma announced a second cabinet reshuffle in 7 months. The Treasury sold a total of 2.55 billion rand, which is about $190 million worth of its 2035, 2040 and 2044 instruments on Tuesday. The bet-to-cover ratio of the 2035 bond fell to 2.4 from 4.2, while that for the 2040 bond was unchanged at 3.7. The cover ratio for the 2044 bond rose to 3.2 from 2.5. And staying in South Africa, a new power struggle is unfolding in the country's old homelands between global mining giants and an impoverished rural populace that will shape the economy for years to come. Parts of an industry long used to labor unrest are now contending with community protests that have cut production of the country's second-largest export earner, platinum, and may shut down some operations altogether.
At the heart of the deadlock are the community leaders who have royal titles and feudal-style control over the homelands, poor rural areas designated to South Africa's black majority by its former white minority rulers. They act as intermediaries with the mining companies which have discovered platinum, chrome, coal, and hope to find shale gas in the homelands, and many locals say they are seeing none of the proceeds.
We as the community, we didn't being informed about the Mapela Trust. We just heard about it, and they put about 175 million rand into that trust. Then they said it's for settlement, but we as community members, we didn't being informed about that.
This is a disaster, just because as so many people are unemployed, we used to get something from the plowing field. Then we used to get plus minus 15 bags of maize meal. So, and the vegetables, the pumpkins, the watermelons, we used to sell them and get something. I remember when I started the college, my mother used to sell the soya beans. And that money, she raised a lot of money from that. And it's the money that helped me to get my diploma in teaching.
The world's largest open-pit platinum mine, Mogalakwena, was shut for 2 weeks last year when residents of the surrounding shanty towns rioted, protesting against the government's failure to provide services and the mine's failure to provide jobs. In April, Amplats announced a deal to set up a 175 million rand, and that's about $11 million community trust for the local Mapela tribe to kickstart development and investment in neglected villages. The trust's aim is to improve the living condition and quality of life of members of the Mapela traditional community. Mogalakwena mine has been closed in the past by protests. In 2015, the company said 2 weeks of protests costed 8,600 ounces in lost production out of over 200,000 ounces of annual output.
Government isn't really coming to the party. The industry is under strain with commodity prices, and in this very difficult environment, we got to find and try and facilitate some kind of accommodation and compromise.
Mogalakwena also highlights challenges confronting companies switching from conventional to mechanized mines, Amplat's stated strategy. Removing a large unruly labor force does not erase social problems. It can create new flashpoints as mechanized mining requires a smaller, skilled workforce. So there are fewer jobs for swelling and impoverished communities.
The Zimbabwean government is looking to slash its budget deficit by half in 2018 to 4% of gross domestic product. The country's Treasury Department also forecasts that economic growth will slow down to 3% in 2018. Government expects an improvement in tax collections next year to increase revenues while reducing the share of salaries to 80% of the budget from 85% this year. Still to come on the program, a look at Nigeria's industrialization policy. Do stay with us.